Hey there, Squirrel Army. How's it going? For today, I want to discuss which of the 2022 precons is best for new players.
You can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing.
Alrighty, so we're looking at the best decks from the year of 2022, which was a year ago. I will be doing the 2023 version of this very soon as well, so be sure to check that out when it comes out. But I don't know whether I want to do 2021 or 2020 or any other years before that, but if you guys want to see more of the past decks, do let me know as well down in the comments below. It helps me bring you sort of stuff that you do want to see here on the channel. So anyway, I want to take this look at these the decks that are from 2022 and give them a bit of analysis to say which ones are the better ones for new players. And we're having that caveat because I think more established players know what they're kind of getting into and will have a litany of cards and whatnot, and also strategies and things like that they can sort of employ in games that makes some of these decks much easier for them to pick up. It's obviously much easier as an entrenched player to sort of pick up almost any deck and play it as long as you kind of like that kind of strategy and be able to have some decent success with it. But for a new player that's just getting into the game, it's a lot more difficult and a lot harder to sort of, get those first few hurdles. So I want to take that new player's perspective for this, and I'm going to be taking that perspective of which one of these precons is most easy to play straight out of the box and which is most easy and cheap to sort of upgrade and be semi-relevant in most of the Commander games that you sort of will find yourself in after you've bought this deck. So you don't want to just buy a dud deck and it's an alright starting deck, but it doesn't really give you a pathway into the rest of the format when you start learning about how to sequence things, how to play things out, how to politic, that sort of thing in the game. But anyway, let's get on into it. One of the first decks that I want to discuss is the Orzhov First Flight deck, which is a pretty easy deck to play. You play big Sphinxes. If people attack you, you get to draw cards. If they don't attack you, that's fine. You're just going to beat them down with Sphinxes and you're going to draw cards from other effects that are in the deck. The deck list is pretty basic, but this is one of the commanders that's from the starter commander decks. So these decks are all a little bit more simple than a lot of the other decks, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. It just is much of an easier deck. I think most of the decks that are from the starter commander list are pretty decent for new players. I think a couple of them aren't that amazing because they aren't sort of very upgradable in most ways. You're not really going to get much out of them if you decide to buy them and then go on to upgrade them or do anything else with them beyond, just having them as a deck and shuffling up and playing and sort of getting some experience with the game. But this deck is one of the ones, and there's a couple other ones we will talk about in a minute, but this one is pretty darn decent in my estimation for a new player to just get your hands on and get some games with. And it's pretty easy to upgrade. You don't need to spend too much on the deck initially anyway at all, and then upgrading the deck isn't that expensive. You can make it more expensive if you want to, but again, you don't need to, and that's the biggest thing for new players. They don't want to have to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on a deck that they might play a few times or whatever. It depends if they actually get entrenched into this format. Next off, I've got another one of the starter commander decks. This one is the Dimir Grave Danger deck. Again, this deck is pretty simple, but that's what makes it good, It's a deck that you can pick up. It's pretty cheap. It revolves around playing mostly zombies and recurring things from your graveyard. I think the commander isn't the best commander for this strategy. I think, as I sort of said when I was doing the upgrade guide for this, but it's not a terrible jumping off point. And there are a couple of nice other commanders that are kind of in the deck as well, that kind of work fairly well for the idea and for this strategy. I actually think, I can't remember which year he was, but Will Helt from, I think it's 2021 rather. Yeah, he's a pretty decent commander for this same sort of strategy, and is a great commander for a deck like this. Again, it doesn't take much. The deck list is pretty easy going. It does need some help and some assistance here and there, but out of the box, it's not too bad, as I sort of say. So it's not a bad investment, and the idea of the deck is very good and can lead to a lot of good games later on down the track when you decide to change it out or upgrade it or do something else with some of the cards that are in the box. Next up, I swear I'll get off of the starter commander decks here for the Beckett Brokers deck list. This is a Bant precon deck. Alrighty, so this is much more of a Voltron style commander deck. Now, I'm not the hugest fan of Voltron style decks, and I don't think that they're that amazing in the format, honestly, but this is a pretty easy one to pick up, and it's not a bad one to utilize either. It, again, is pretty basic, but it is a bit more complex and has a few more complex things going on in the list than some of the more basic decks from the starter commander lists. Some of the other Streets of New Capenna ones aren't too bad, but I think this is the best one for a new player. Again, it's very straightforward. All you kind of do is count the number of different counters you have on different permanents you have, and then say, I punch you for however much with parry, and just hope he kind of doesn't die, or whatever, or whatnot, that sort of thing. So that's the idea of a lot of these Voltron decks, and kind of why they're either hit or miss. Like, they can be really good, but they can also be really bad, because as soon as either people know what you're kind of playing by going, oh, you're playing Voltron, so all I've got to do is detain your commander and you're never going to win the game, basically. And, that's kind of what happens. Or you just run away and kill, maybe one or two people, or maybe even you kill everyone sometimes, and people go, next time we're going to know what's happening with your deck, and we're not going to let you have your commander for any more than a few minutes. Because we know what that deck does now. Or, again, you take out one person or whatever, and then the rest of the people that are left go, oh, well, now this is the thing that we need to really worry about, because otherwise in the next 2 turns they'll kill us, sort of thing, and will gang up on you and that sort of thing. So that's kind of why these decks, I don't think they're that amazing in the format. They can be really good. They can be really fun. And if you kind of go down a route of, different counters and things like that, it is quite an interesting way of kind of doing it rather than it's all on the commander. Because, again, the fact that all these other things kind of have counters on them means that they can do stuff outside of the commander just being the one win condition. So at least there's other routes to you winning rather than you're all or nothing on parry doing stuff. It is mostly focused on parry doing the things, but, you know, again, you do have those other cards to do some of the legwork, so you don't have to worry if your commander does get taken out from time to time or constantly or whatever. You have other ways to win with this deck, which is what makes it pretty decent for a new player, because at least you'll be able to play some amount of Magic with the rest of the deck rather than just being sitting there and going, cool, well, I can't do anything else because I'm 100% relying on my commander. Another deck that I want to talk about is the Gruul Exit from Exile deck. Alright, so this one is an extremely powerful precon deck straight out of the box and can be upgraded to being a very powerful deck as well. Not like it's super busted, but it can be very, very strong. And it can be extremely strong if you build it the right way as well. It's a very simple deck straight out of the box and has a lot of great utility cards for this strategy that they printed in the last few years. So it really gets a lot of good help that it sort of needed to make it a lot better in this particular release. I think they even released a few things that were after this that were really good for it as well. So there were just a lot of strategic cards that they kind of put out there for this type of strategy where you exile, play cards from exile, and you get bonuses and benefits from doing that. I think that the base list that this has needs a few cards certainly as well, like many precon decks. And actually, I think it needs a 1,000-year elixir and a couple other cards like that to tap and untap your commander, or instill energy and things like that as well. Those are a couple of cards that, and Nature's Chosen and cards like that I didn't really think of when I really built this deck originally, but now I'm looking back and thinking that those were probably cards that I probably really wanted for a deck like this. To get it going and to get it doing a whole lot of stuff. There's a bunch of cards, again, that aren't really exactly what you want in this list, but again, they're not a bad base state to go off of just to, you know, sleeve up and shuffle up and play a few games with. So I do highly recommend this one because it is so powerful, even straight out of the box, and can be very easily upgraded into something much more powerful. And another Gruul deck that is another deck from the starter commander decks is the Dragonic Destruction deck. So again, these commander decks are extremely simple and extremely basic, but this one is probably the most powerful out of the box and straightforward to play. All you do is play big dragons, turn them sideways while you're in combat, and punch people with your very big double striking dragons, and people will die very, very quickly. There's not much more strategy to it than that, and you don't really need much more strategy than that in this deck. It could do with a few other dragons and this and that and a few other bits and pieces here and there, but this is probably the strongest precon and probably one of the strongest basic decks that you can probably just open up, you know, sleeve up and play straight out of the box. Obviously, as I say, you can upgrade it and it can be quite better. But again, you honestly just don't need to. It's really good right out of the box and isn't too complicated to have to work out what you're doing with it. Alright, and the last one I want to talk about is the Tyranid Swarm Commander deck. Alright, so the Tyranid Swarm one is the one that I think from this set is pretty cool. The reason why I've sort of left this one to the end is because these ones, along with a lot of the other Warhammer decks, are somewhat more expensive. In fact, a bit more expensive, and are pretty scarce, honestly. So it's not the perfect deck to kind of get into or easy to get into, but it is an easy deck from the deck side of things, from the monetary side and from the perhaps obtaining side. It might not be as easy to get this deck as some of the other decks, but this one is a really great deck. It's a very simple deck. You make a whole bunch of mana, you make a whole bunch of big beating Tyranids, and you punch people's faces. And you're just in the colors to take good advantage of literally everything that's good in those colors with the kind of cards that kind of come with the Tyranid Swarm and all the X spells and all that sort of stuff that kind of go into these lists and things like that. So again, it's not the perfect list as far as like, you know, ultra playability goes or higher power decks go type thing. But again, that's not what new players, I think, would be looking for. They're looking for straightforward and easy to learn and fun decks that don't require a whole lot of more investment, or if they do have some more investment, the payoff for that investment is well worth it. Alrighty, so those were the best 2022 precons for new players. What did you guys think? You guys can let me know your thoughts right down there in the comments below. Hope you've enjoyed this one and hope you will join me again in the next one.